Hey guys, it's Vin again from the Bear Gentleman, and today we're going to be wrapping up our review of the Surface Duo. So I got this about a month ago now, and I've been using it every day as my daily. And there's a lot to actually talk about when it comes to this device. And because there's actually so much to talk about, this is actually going to be a very long video, so I'll leave like timestamps down below. And I'm actually going to have my script here to help me like keep on moving. And for this video, first we'll go ahead and talk about the things that I do like about the device and that can be useful, and then we'll go on to the things I didn't like and the issues that I've had while using this phone. And I want to be like very clear, especially because like you might just like watch the first half and then not go on to the negatives. It is a very useful device, but it is very quirky and there are a lot of issues with it. So if you go ahead and like go and sit through the good part about the device, make sure you stick around for the negatives because there is quite a lot. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to determine whether or not this is the right device for you or if it fits your lifestyle or your needs. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the good stuff. And the first thing about this device, which is why I'm pretty sure most of you guys will be looking at this in the first place, is going to be the dual displays. And so the dual screens are actually very helpful, especially when it comes to multitasking. And it's in a way that isn't actually possible on most phones, including the Galaxy Fold devices. And that's because these are actually two individual displays, whereas the Galaxy Fold is one that kind of folds in half. And the cool thing with this phone is that you can use each screen independently of the other. And if you choose, you can kind of fold it over and have the other screen turned off altogether. And in a way, this actually ends up working kind of like as a dual monitor setup. And this can be very helpful, like if you're like shopping online and you want to like check prices, you can have like one Edge tab over here, like you're looking up a certain item, and then you can have another Edge tab over here looking like for coupons or discounts or whatever. It can also be very helpful if you're watching videos and you need to take notes. So like if you're watching like a video of like how to cook something and you want to like write down your notes on the other side, this actually works really great for that. Or maybe you're on the road and you're working on a report and that you need to have like an Excel sheet open on one side and a Word document on another. And this device was actually made for that very specific scenario. All right, and the second cool thing about this device is the hinge. And the hinge actually makes this device very versatile. It allows you to kind of go ahead and prop it open at any angle that you would like. Or maybe you want to have it like this, kind of like how you would have a laptop open. You can go ahead and kind of situate it depending on what your need is. And for me, like the really great thing about this is that I've been able to use this in my car and I didn't have to like go ahead and mount the magnet thing on the back because I was able to go ahead and use a GPS just by propping it open like that and it stayed in place. So again, the hinge actually makes this very unique and it allows it to do things that something like the Galaxy Fold cannot. All right, so the next great thing about this device is the aspect ratio, and the aspect ratio actually lets you fit a whole lot of information onto the screen. For example, each one of these screens is actually smaller than something like the Note 20 Ultra, which is a massive phone. But with these screens, you can actually fit a lot more of like a video onto it. So if you're watching this video here, sometimes I've had an issue where it was using the, for example, so if you're watching this video here, you get a lot more of the video in portrait mode than you would on the Note 20 Ultra. And I've actually found this aspect ratio to be really helpful whenever you're using a GPS because you get a lot more of the map like in the background. And whenever you have like a regular 16:9 phone, it's kind of like very slim, whereas this one you get like kind of a bigger picture in there. And overall, the aspect ratio does make this device a bit wider than your traditional smartphone, but I think a lot of people would be able to appreciate it. And that actually brings me to the next great thing about this, and that's the design of it. Like I said, it is a pretty wide device, but it is also very slim and slender, and I think it just looks really, really nice. It looks really cool. It certainly draws a lot of attention, and it's definitely like a conversation starter. So if you're looking for something that's like very unique, this is actually really cool for that. And also, whenever you have this thing open, it is actually ridiculously thin, like almost like unbelievably thin. And even whenever it's closed, it's not too much larger than your average smartphone would be. Actually, I think it's a little bit thinner like on this edge than the Note 20 Ultra is. And really, if you're looking for something like slim and sleek that has two screens, this is like the only thing that you could get, because if you look at something like the Galaxy Z Fold, that is noticeably thicker because those screens kind of like form a curve whenever it's closed. Whereas this one, whenever it's closed, allows the screens to like kind of lie flat on top of each other. And also the great thing about this phone is that it actually feels pretty light. It is heavier than something like the Note 20 Ultra, but because of like how wide it is and how the design is, especially whenever you have it open, it actually feels really light in your hand. All right, so now we're actually gonna go ahead and talk about the Microsoft apps on this device. And actually, I think this is a huge perk for this phone. And you can see over here, I have Microsoft Word open on this side, and I have Microsoft Excel open on the other. And everything about like how these apps work with this phone is like fantastic. It actually works way better here than it does on any other Android device, which does kind of make sense if you think about it, because Microsoft is the one that went ahead and designed this phone, is also the one designing the apps. So obviously they do work really well together. And actually, I think this is one of the things that actually saves this device from being a total failure, because when it comes to app support, Google hasn't helped them out like at all. For example, one of the things that I think most people would think that this device would be able to do is having like two separate windows open of like a browser. And if you're only using Google Chrome, you cannot do that, but in Edge you can. And the last cool thing I want to go ahead and mention about this device is that if you're in a pinch, you can actually go ahead and turn this into a temporary mobile station. Like I was saying earlier, things like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, those things actually work really well with this device. And if you were in a pinch and you really needed to get some work done, you could go ahead and pair up a mouse and keyboard to this, and it actually works really, really well. And by pairing those to this, you actually get a lot of functionality within the Microsoft apps that you would if you were on a desktop. Such as like you can use like keyboard shortcuts such as like copy, paste, underline, bold, cut, whatever. It's all practically there. Just keep in mind that by using the Surface Duo, you're not getting 100% desktop versions of the apps. They are still the Android version of the apps, and there are like a bunch of quirks that go along with it. But I'd say that if you were in a pinch or if you were traveling light, you'd be able to go ahead and get some work done by using the Surface Duo. But I do want to stress that this is not a replacement for a laptop. And I would say that it is only good for light tasks, like maybe checking up on emails, typing up some documents, working on a couple of like spreadsheets, but that's it. And I do know that there are other phones out there that can get some of this stuff done. For example, like if you're using the Note 20 Ultra that I'm using to record this, if you go ahead and hook it up to an external display, you can use DeX. But you can go ahead and kind of like get a lot of functionality out of this phone without going ahead and like having to hook it up to an external monitor, which I think is really great. Again, if you're packing light, I mean, this might be the way to go if you're going to be doing office work when you're away. One thing I do want to touch on real quick is that the battery life is actually better than I thought it would be. I average roughly about 5.5 hours of screen time. So definitely not terrible, especially not for a device, again, that it's just like so slim and has two displays. So that was a pleasant surprise. All right, so far those are the things I liked about using this phone. But like I was saying earlier, there are a lot of quirks and a lot of downsides for using this device as well. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about those things and why I definitely don't think that this is a great primary device for most people. All right, so the number one thing I think is going to bother a lot of people with this phone is the dated hardware. So even whenever it came out last year, the Surface Duo was already 1 year behind whenever it came to specs. It is using a Snapdragon 855, which was 1 year old last year, and now it's 2 years old. And by no means is it a terrible processor. I actually think it's actually really great. My Note 10 Plus has it, and I have never had any issues with that phone. However, I think that's because the Note 10 Plus has like 12 gigs of RAM. And the problem with this phone is that it only has 6 gigabytes of RAM, which makes it really difficult. Like that's what I was saying earlier, that it's really good for light multitasking, but you definitely cannot push this device as hard as something like the Note. Like on the Note 10 Plus, like I was like editing all of my old videos on it and it never gave me any issues. That would definitely be a problem with the 6 gigabytes that this phone has. So I definitely do not recommend using this phone for heavy use. And I think one of the worst things about the hardware on this is the camera, because the camera on this, you only get one camera and it's a single 11 megapixel shooter, and it is horrible. You can kind of get away with it by using it like kind of like a selfie camera, but it definitely isn't optimized for most apps, and it does really terrible in low light situations. And the fact that this is the only camera you have over here, if you're looking for a device with versatility, this would not be it. For example, tomorrow I'm going to a birthday party, and I already know for a fact that this isn't the phone I want to bring with me, because the photos that come out of this are absolutely terrible. And whenever you're like out traveling and stuff like that, I do think that a lot of people would want something that is more capable of capturing those memorable moments. I think it's fine for like taking video calls once in a while, but I would say that is about it. Also, you are a year behind on Wi-Fi. Well, actually, you're on last generation's Wi-Fi. This has Wi-Fi 5. We're on Wi-Fi 6 right now. Also, you're missing out on 5G. And I mean, that's not too terrible for a phone that is now like 400, 500 bucks. But it's definitely something to keep in mind because the push for 5G is getting really serious right now. And they already went ahead and they shut down 3G. So 4G is kind of like your last line of defense right now. And actually with this device, you're missing a lot of the bells and whistles that you would expect from a premium product. You don't have wireless charging, you don't have NFC, and you don't have expandable memory. And I think the expandable memory thing is actually going to bother a lot of people because again, this is meant to be a productivity device. And that kind of combined with the lack of RAM, it's really surprising to me that they would go ahead and kind of cripple it in that way. Because it's actually also not like you could go ahead and buy like a 512 gigabyte variant or a 1 terabyte variant. Those aren't options. The max you can get on this phone is 256 gigabytes. So if you keep a lot of things on your phone, that's definitely going to be an issue. All right, and the second terrible thing about this device that I want to talk about is that it glitches a lot. It glitches so much that I think that that would be the thing that would prevent people from using this as their primary phones. Like I've been using it for 30 days now, and like some days it felt like I was living in a nightmare. And don't get me wrong, it's still like kind of fun and cool to use, but the fact that it glitches out this much, I can't believe that it's actually made it as a final product. Like I've used this phone every day for 30 days now, and I mean this is my last day on it, but I cannot wait to be done with it because it crashes so much, it glitches out so much. Sometimes whenever I have it open, the opposite screen will be on. Sometimes it takes a while for it to turn on either one of the screens. And sometimes like, especially like when I was taking phone calls, like my messages opened up in the back and I was like typing stuff again. So there's a lot of issues like whenever it comes to glitches with this phone, and you have to be extremely patient. In my experience, it has gotten better. Like, so they just pushed an update not too long ago, and that did make things a little bit better, but still it glitches out a lot and you got to be prepared for that. But so moving along, the next thing I want to talk about is that the apps crash quite a bit on this device. And I'm not too sure if that's because of the lack of RAM or because the apps aren't optimized for it, but they do crash a lot. The Microsoft apps, like I said, they work flawlessly. Haven't had too many issues with those. But whenever it comes to any Google apps, or whenever it comes to like Facebook, Instagram, whatever, anything that might take a little bit too much power in the background, those do crash quite a bit. For example, Facebook and Instagram, they'll go ahead and they'll cut off like parts of posts that are like too big. And if you're watching videos on Facebook, sometimes you get like issues like where the bottom half of the screen is like you just get a little bit of a sliver for the comments, which go ahead and like kind of ruin the experience. Also, if you're using Facebook Messenger, if you're doing a phone call, whatever, the image is always reversed the wrong way. I don't know how that is, but it's always the camera opens up facing the wrong way on any of those apps. So again, for third-party apps, you aren't getting the best experience. Like I said, they are there, and if you don't use social media that much, it might not be that big of an issue for you, but it's definitely something you should keep in mind. And also, other than the lack of app support on this, there is a lack of Microsoft support on it as well. Because, so the strange thing is that whenever this device came out, I think it was already on Android 10, but at that time, Android 11 was already out. And now we are a year later, and so they promised that this phone will get Android 11, but Android 12 is about to be out. So you're like 1 year behind on everything. And also I want to mention that the only keyboard that works like decent on this is the Microsoft Swift keyboard. And that needs some serious improvements. Actually, the Swift keyboard is one of the things I hate the most about this device because, I mean, maybe I'm just too used to the whole Google keyboard, and they actually made it so you can customize it to make it feel and look like it. But the Swift keyboard, like I've had so many issues where it registers a different key, or the autofill and the predictive text like will fill like something like totally just like something random and just at the worst times. And I've had issues like whenever I hit the space bar, it goes ahead and automatically fills the predictive text. And like it's supposed to be like if you tap the space bar twice, that's when it's supposed to fill it in. But it'll just randomly fill in words whenever you hit the space bar. And it just, again, it's not a great experience. If you use emojis a lot, those are a pain to get in here as well. Again, I just, that is probably the thing I hate the most about this phone, and that is the Microsoft Swift keyboard. It definitely needs a lot of work. All right, so the next couple things I'm gonna talk about have to deal with the design on this. Like I was saying earlier, I actually do like the design quite a bit. I actually put that in the pros section because again, it looks very nice. It's very sleek, but there are some challenges that are presented because this is again, such a different design than what I think most people are used to. And because of the width of this, it can be kind of hard for, I think, a lot of people to hold. And it's not so much of an issue when you're not running around, but like if you're out and about, like if you're shopping or whatever, it can be very difficult to kind of manage having this open and like moving a shopping cart. Or if you don't have it in your hand, you might have it in your pocket, and it can be kind of hard to get it out of there as well, because again, it's just such a wide device. And like I was saying earlier, I think the width is something that's necessary for this device because it does add a lot of functionality to like what you can fit on the screen. But you're definitely going to have to go ahead and consider whether or not you'll be comfortable using such a wide device on a regular basis. And continuing on the design, you'll notice that there's nothing on the outside of this. Again, it looks really cool, but from a functionality standpoint, you'll notice that there's no way for you to tell what type of notification you might have. Or if you're getting a phone call, you don't know who's calling you. And I've actually went ahead to see who's calling, you have to open it up, right? But that also can go ahead and pick up a phone call if the phone thinks that you went ahead and held it open like that. And that can be an issue. I've actually had that happen to me where I was getting a phone call from somebody I didn't want to answer, and it went ahead and it picked up the phone call. So definitely there's like, it would have been really helpful if they had something on the outside, like maybe something even tiny, like if they don't want to like go ahead and ruin the outside, maybe they just want to like add something like the Z Flip had, like that little tiny display. That would have been more than enough, and I think that would have been very helpful to this, because the only other thing that they give you is like a whole peek mode, which actually, it doesn't work that well. It's actually it thinks that I have it open and the whole display's on right now. Again, you do run into these glitches and quirks, but it's supposed to, let me see if I can get it. There you go. I don't know if that's going to show up on camera or not, but that's the peak mode over here. And it doesn't really offer you that much valuable information, and I really wish that they had something that showed us more information on the front of the display. Maybe even if it was like the old school LED indicators, something would have been better than the nothing that they have over here. All right, and I do want to mention some other design flaws real quick. So I have this phone open right here, and so the interesting thing is the hardware placement. So they have the front firing speaker on the right side of the phone, but your earpiece speaker is on the left along with the microphone. And that actually becomes an issue whenever you're taking a phone call, you turn on speakerphone, because so most likely whenever you're taking a phone call, you'll have the phone like this. So now your speakerphone is firing back. Also, if you're using the phone like halfway like this and you're watching a video on this, again, the speaker is firing from the back. You have nothing in the front. This is also a bigger issue whenever you're taking video calls, because again, this is the side over here with the camera. But again, if you're taking a video call like that, the speaker is firing towards the back. And even if you have it open like this, it can be kind of disorienting because you're going to be looking on this side, but the volume is going to come out from the other side. And also an issue whenever you're watching videos as well. I really wish that they would have at least gone ahead and put another speaker on this side, or they work something else out for taking phone calls. And this setup here has actually bothered me quite a bit more than I thought it would, and it's definitely something you guys should keep in mind whenever you're considering this device. I think you can go ahead and mitigate a lot of these issues by having a Bluetooth headset connected to this, but that actually also has its own issues, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the connectivity issues that I faced with this. The main one being Bluetooth. it cuts out quite a bit. And that's a really big issue, because to have somewhat of a decent experience with this, you need to rely on Bluetooth accessories such as having a smartwatch to show you the notifications and a Bluetooth headset for taking phone calls or watching videos. And I've actually had it so like my Galaxy Watch will disconnect from this like randomly. And again, it's a really big issue because without like something else, like some type of accessory, you won't know what type of notification you have. And I've also had it so whenever I'm watching videos or listening to music, the Bluetooth will cut out quite a bit. I thought my Galaxy Buds were just dying because I've had them for so long. The connectivity issues get worse whenever you're using this phone for gaming. So I was like trying to like test out like how good it would be like, well, for gaming. And I had my Xbox controller hooked up to this, but it kept cutting out every like 5 or 6 minutes. And again, a really big issue if you're in a game and your controller just dies on you randomly. And if you were thinking that you could go ahead and connect your controller through the USB-C port instead of the Bluetooth connection, you cannot, because for whatever reason, whenever you connect an Xbox controller to this device, your character just keeps spinning around in circles. And I've tried that on Call of Duty Black Ops, I've tried it on Fortnite, and again, it doesn't work like you would need it to. But on the bright side, I did not have any issues whenever it came to using the Surface Pen, the mouse, or the keyboard. Those just, for whatever reason, don't seem to cut out as much. All right, guys, and another thing that I did want to mention is that the device is actually quite fragile. One thing I definitely want to point out is that the bottom surrounding the USB Type-C port is made out of plastic, and a lot of people have actually complained that the plastic lip has cracked over time from pulling their charging wire in and out. And so to kind of mitigate that, what they've done is they've gotten a magnetic charging cable to kind of avoid having to pull the cord in and out of the USB Type-C port. And another thing is that this phone is not IP rated, so it definitely has been tested against water or dust resistance, and I do not recommend it coming in contact with those elements. All right, and the last issue I've had with this is that there is a serious lack of accessories and customizability with it. So you can see that, so this color over here is the only color that the device comes in. And as far as accessories go, there are a couple of cases out there, like a handful, but I've tried a bunch of them. I've tried the OtterBox one, and that was horrible because it reduced the functionality of the device. And the greatest case that I've seen on is the one that came in the box, which is this little rubber bumper case Microsoft gives you with the phone. By the way, so you don't have to go ahead and buy a separate one unless you want a different color. They are unnecessarily expensive, but I'm guessing that's because there isn't anything else out there that works. All right, so basically how I feel is that this is not the device for everyone, and it certainly isn't ready for daily use in any case, because again, it's just so fragile. It doesn't have the power to keep up with it. It doesn't have the app support that it needs. It doesn't have a decent camera. And I do think particularly as a phone, it is a pain to use because again, I think a phone, you should be able to see like what type of notifications you got. Again, I remember like when having a screen on the front of a flip phone was a big deal. I don't know why they didn't put something on the front of this one. However, I do think you can make the case that this would be a decent secondary device for a lot of people. For example, maybe a device that you don't need to take too many phone calls on. Maybe you only needed to use it for light multitasking, kind of like a tablet that's always going to be in like split screen mode. It could be great for something like that. Maybe you are on the road a lot and you are constantly on Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word. Maybe you just need to check your emails once in a while. So maybe like, you know, as like an enterprise type of device, I could see it kind of work. But just keep in mind, again, you're going to be using this for very light multitasking. It can't withstand anything too heavy duty. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and seal the review by going ahead and giving this a final grade of a C+. It might seem a bit harsh, but again, there's a lot of flaws with this device. And I do think that like there might be a couple people out there that could appreciate it for what it is. Again, especially at its new price point, I think like if you're in the market, you want to like dip your toes into like the whole foldable thing. This might be the way to go, but just know that if you're going to be using it as your primary device, you are going to be running into a lot of issues and you do have to be patient with this. And there is a lot of potential here, like it was saying, like as a secondary device. But again, if you're using it as a primary device, I do know for a fact that you're going to run into a lot of issues with this. And again, that's why I'm giving it a C+. and I tried my hardest to like this device more, but I'm at the end of my 30-day window to return this, and it just didn't live up to my expectations for what I needed to do. Alright guys, so that's actually it for the Surface Duo. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you guys have any questions about this device, you can go ahead and leave them down below in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it. And if you guys found this video helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more tech content like this, and I'll see you guys next time.